Hello everybody, 6-Speed Dakota here, and today I have a bit of a fun project. We're doing the brake pads and rotors on the front of this 2001 Dodge Grand Caravan. Now, you have to pay attention when you're ordering parts for this particular vehicle because the different engines, oh my hands are dirty, the different brakes on the rear, so if it has drum or disc, and all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive will differ between the style of brake on the front. So make sure that you tell the parts person everything so he can get you the right pads and rotors. So let's get started with stuff you're going to need. Alright, get my phone off of there. Parts you're going to need new brake pads, which I like to use OE Raybestos. They're good, I've never had any problems with these. And of course you're going to need a new OE style rotor if you're replacing the rotors. This one has warped rotors. And the problem with these vehicles is that the brakes are not big enough for the weight of the vehicle. This is quite a heavy vehicle and the brakes are quite small. So they tend to chew through them very quickly and they tend to burn up and warp brakes and rotors and stuff like that. So that's kind of one design flaw in these vehicles. Anyhow, let's get on to the tools and goops and stuff you're going to need. Top supplies you're going to need some form of disc brake quiet. You can also use the caliper grease. I don't like to use this because this is a little bit more expensive than this, but if you're only doing one job, you can get a tiny little packet of the brake pad lubricant, or the brake lubricant and whatnot, and just use it. I do a lot of brake jobs, so I got the big one. You're going to need a can of brake cleaner, or some form of solvent, mineral spirits or something like that, to clean the rotors off, and you're going to need your trusty anti-seize. Tools you're going to need for this job. You're going to need a 3/4 socket, and that's for taking the wheel off. You are going to need a 1/2-inch ratchet. No, sorry, this is a 3/8 ratchet. You're going to need a 1/2-inch ratchet, and you are going to need a 13/16 socket, a 7mm Allen bit, your good old trusty C-clamp or a large pair of channel lock pliers for pushing the piston back in, a hefty screwdriver for prying, and you may or may not need a hammer depending if the rotor's stuck on or not. So there you go. Just simple basic hand tools. First thing we're going to start by doing is removing the wheel. Alright, so the first step we have to do is we have to take the wheel off. Now, you got the wheel lock on there. Be careful you don't damage it. Take this one off by hand. Now, I've already loosened everything. I'm just using the gun to make it easier to rip everything off. If I can actually get it in there. Come on. And then we can pull the wheel off and roll it out of the way. This vehicle is actually pretty wide. So it's actually kind of hard to fit in the garage when you want to get to both sides. Anyway, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to turn the wheel so that the caliper faces outwards. Okay, so first things first, we got to get this spring clip off the caliper. That's all you have to do. You take a screwdriver, you wedge it in under there, and you pop it out. Then the next step you're going to do is you're going to remove the caliper sliders. Okay, so the first step, after we get the wheel off and turned, is we're going to, using our 7mm hex bit, we're going to remove the caliper. Now what you want to do first is you want to loosen both of these before removing them. Because if you loosen one and remove it completely, and you go to loosen the other, the caliper will want to swing out. That makes it pretty hard to do this job if things are fighting you. So once you feel like the threads are out, all you have to do is kind of twist it and pull at the same time. That'll create enough friction to slide out the slider pin. Like that. Then what we can do is remove the caliper. Okay, so now that we got the caliper sliders out, we can pull the caliper off, pop the brake pad out. Now the brake pad doesn't look too bad, but It actually looks kind of chewed up on the bottom edge. And so is the rotor. And then this pad stays on the rotor here, or on the caliper mounting bracket. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sit this guy up and out of the way somewhere on the coil spring where it's going to sit nicely so it doesn't hang by the hose. And now we're going to move on to taking the caliper mounting bracket off. Alright, so before we move too far ahead, we're going to spray our brake pads here with the caliper, or brake pad quiet compound. Spray it on the backing plate, don't get any on the pad itself. And then, for this guy here, try not to get it on that hook, but just try to get it around it. Be quite liberal with it. That's what it's for. And we're going to let these sit, and we can install them when they're tacky. Now we're going to move over to taking the caliper mounting bracket off. Alright, so now we're going to take the caliper mounting bracket off. So using your 1/2 inch ratchet and your 13/16 socket, pull these things off. These things will be a little tight. So be prepared for that. Oh my god. So remember, like the caliper, loosen one, then loosen the other, and then remove them. Don't remove one completely or this thing's going to want to swing up and out of the way, which will make things difficult later on. Pull the caliper mounting bracket off. Then the rotor just slides right off. Oh wow, this thing's really chewed up. Oh well, it's getting replaced anyway. Now what we're going to have to do is using some brake cleaner. We get in here and we're going to clean off the hub. A little bit of brake cleaner on that. Then we're going to take our caliper mounting bracket, do the exact same thing. Clean the sliding surfaces. Okay, so once the friction points are all cleaned, we're ready to move on. Now what we want to do, we're going to take our caliper mounting bracket, we're going to use a little bit of anti-seize lubricant right on the points where the pads slide. So up top, here, and right there, and right there. And then there's a couple of points here and here. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we have to clean off the rotor before we put it on. Alright, so using a little bit of brake cleaner, we're going to spray off the friction surfaces of the rotor and wipe them down. Now this gets the anti-rust coating off of it in order to provide a better friction surface, or else it'll just gum up the pads and they'll smoke and they won't brake very well. So there we go. Slide the new rotor on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our caliper mounting bracket right here. We're going to put a little bit of anti-seize on both the bolts. One right there. And one right there. We're going to take our caliper mounting bracket, set it into place. We're going to screw in the bolts. Then using our 13/16 socket. Gonna snug the top one. We're gonna snug down the bottom one. Now, make sure these guys are good and tight. These bolts take a lot of stress. Alright, now that we're done that, it's time to push the piston back into the caliper. Now we're going to push the piston back into the caliper. So what we're going to do is, using our trusty C-clamp, to gently push it back in. Now you got to pay attention because on the rear calipers they have a phenolic or plastic piston. So use a brake pad to push against instead of just straight up the piston. So these should go in nice and easy. No force really required. If it takes a lot of force, chances are your caliper's seized and you should replace it. But that's another video. This one seems to be okay. And when it stops, do not continue anymore. It's just about there. Right there. And back off the clamp as much as I can. There we go. There we go. Caliper's all ready to go. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to clean off the slide pins. So using, again, a little bit of brake cleaner. Clean them off. Wipe them off with a cloth or something. And then we're going to put in specific, so you don't have to worry about it. And a little bit of slider grease on there. There we go. Now we're going to put the pads back on. We're going to finish off the job. So on these vehicles, first you want to start by putting the outer pad, and make sure that you match the squealer tab on the back of the pad here to what side it is. So you're going to want to sit that guy on the outside, like that. Now the inner pad has clips that stick into the piston and the caliper, like that. Now what we can do is we can take the caliper, flip it, and slide it into place. Then what we can do is you may have to wiggle the caliper a little bit to get the slider pins to line up. Snug them both down. Tighten that up. Tighten the bottom one up. And double check the top. And double check the bottom. Then taking your big socket, double check the top mounting bracket bolt and the bottom mounting bracket bolt. Okay, there we go. Now the last step is we have to put this clip back in here on the front. Alright, so in order to get this clip back on, you take the back edges of these on the clip you put it on these little landings here on the caliper mounting bracket. And so you try to slide them back as far as you can, then you push with your thumb all the way up. It should pop into place. Now notice it's not fully seated, so you can take your screwdriver or whatever, just give it a good whack, and it should sit all the way down in there like that. Alright, so now that we're done, we can pump up the brakes, then put the wheel back on, and take it for a test drive. Okay, so before we pump the brakes up, we want to look at the brake fluid level. We can see the brake fluid level is right about there, so it's nice and full, so we're okay to pump up the brakes. What we're going to do is we're going to pump the brakes a few times, and actually twice, and it was fully firm. Feels nice and firm to me, so let's go throw the wheels back on. I like to double check that the rotors are somewhat free. That's perfect, just like that. They should drag a little bit, but not too much. This is just perfect. So now we're going to put the wheels back on. Alright, so let's slip these guys back on. So start across from the wheel lock. Now with the wheel lock, all you do is just gently, because you don't want to damage these little, whatever these are, flutes inside here, because then you'll never get the thing back off. So just be very, very gentle, and then torque this guy on by hand. Alright, let's take this thing for a test drive. Alrighty. If I didn't already have a girlfriend, we could go cruising for soccer moms. Just kidding. Step on the brakes a few times. You can really tell that these vans don't have very good brakes, so you really have to hammer on them to get these things to stop. I noticed in my Dakota, it doesn't take much. So we're gonna make sure nobody's behind me, because my aunt's really short. I have to adjust the mirror. Medium stop. The thing I like about Chrysler minivans is they're not that expensive to fix. They really don't cost all that much to fix, and they're actually quite easy to fix when you compare them to, say, other minivans. You don't have to take the intake manifold off to change the spark plugs. You don't have to. It's not real hard to service the transmission or the engine or anything like that. I had changed the pan gasket in this van, and it was really, really easy. I didn't have to remove an exhaust pipe or anything like that. They're looking at getting rid of it, mind you, but so far it's been a pretty good vehicle for them. Feels like it might need new shocks or something, but it definitely needs new rear tires, that's for sure. Now I gotta be careful because I believe that's a cop in front of me. I don't have my radar detector on me to find out. It feels okay. I've always found with these brakes that you have to be quite heavy on the pedal to get it to stop. Like I said, the brakes on these vehicles are just not that heavy duty for the sheer weight of these. These are 3,800, 3,600 pounds. They're not super heavy, but for a single piston caliper with 11 or 12-inch rotors, it's not very much braking force for the size of vehicle. So now that I've warmed the pads up, it seems to be braking a little bit better, but you know, I guess I'm used to a big truck that's got heavy brakes on it, big heavy brakes, so just a different vehicle. I've done the rear pads in this thing. I've done the front pads and rotors about 5 years ago, and now they need to be done again. Stop. And there we go. They feel pretty good. I'm quite happy with the way they are. I always use good brake parts, so I never worry about have to worry about comebacks or anything like that. But shut it off. There's not a lot of fuel in this. Ugh. We found this video informative. I know a lot of people have Chrysler minivans and they like it when I do videos on this thing because I have a few of them on there now, and I hope that this is informative. I hope that you like it, and I hope it helps you to do your own brakes. Anyway, the one thing I suggest is always use good quality high-end brake parts, as premium as you can get them. Because I found with the cheaper economy level stuff that they didn't work all that well. They didn't brake very well, and they made noise, and the parts just didn't seem to fit together that great. This thing went together really nicely because I had premium OE quality parts. So make sure that you don't skimp on your brake parts. That's very, very important. Anyway, I'm 6Speed Dakota signing off. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you can follow me Facebook at facebook.com/6SpeedDakota. Twitter at 6Speed Dakota, and also on Google+. Also 6Speed Dakota. So, I hope you like this and everything else, and stay tuned for the next one. Take it easy, everybody.